Welcome to the Focused and Fearless podcast, the show designed to explore how you can step into powerful self-leadership and stop settling for less in your life, business, health, and wealth. I'm your host, Heather Angel, and as a certified energy practitioner, coach, and online business consultant with over a decade of experience, you can expect expansive, honest, and enlightening conversations about what it really takes to create the changes in your life and business that right now may just feel completely out of reach. Thank you for choosing to invest in yourself by listening to this episode. Without further ado, let's dive in. Today, I am joined by my very good friend and certified money coach, Fanny Snaith. Now, Fanny has been helping people like you and me understand our emotions and behaviours around how we earn, spend, and save money. She's been doing this since 2015 and is freaking amazing at it. In this episode, we talk about a lot. I've got to be honest, this episode is a lot longer than both of us anticipated. So I have put some timestamps in the show notes for you, just so you know if there are certain bits you want to jump to, you can do. But however, I really urge you to listen to the whole thing if you can, because in this episode, we are going to talk about money archetypes. We are going to explore what motivates us around money. And I mean, my gosh, Fanny shares a really powerful story about her childhood and the moment she decided she was never going to be poor again. And Fanny is a self-made millionaire, and she talks about that very openly and honestly in this conversation about how she got there and actually how she felt once she was there. This conversation goes in so many different directions, but I really think it's a powerful conversation. It's one that we all need to have. It's one that we need to understand, that a lot of what we think and how we perceive money really impacts how it shows up for us in the world. And I know right now, with the way the world is, this is a conversation that everyone is having. Everyone is talking about money. And I really, really hope that learning about your money archetype and understanding from what Fanny shares in this episode, how we perceive money and how we are conditioned to think about it and how our emotions affect how we save, how we earn, and how we spend. I really hope all that information is going to help you, especially over the next sort of 6 to 8 months where things may feel like they are more challenging for you. All right, my darlings, let's dive in. Fanny, welcome to the Focused and Fearless podcast, my lovely.
So nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
It's so nice to have you on here because we've known each other for such a long time. And I think right now, this conversation is more important than ever. So before we dive into all the good stuff that you're going to share, I'd love you to actually let the listeners know a little bit about your story and how you found yourself being a certified money coach.
Okay. So money has always been a major theme running through my life. And I know that you like the spiritual stuff, and numerology is very close to my heart. And my life path number, which is the number that you reach, for those of you who aren't familiar with numerology, if you add all the digits of an 8-digit year of birth, your birth date of birth, mine comes to 35, which means that you add the 3 and 5 together, which means I'm a 358. And an 8 in numerology is all about abundance and power and the balance of it, the balance of spiritual and material wealth. And looking back over my life, money has run through my life absolutely from the get-go, from day dot, even probably before I was born. So my money story, of which everybody has a money story, and our money stories are really important. So I would invite all of your listeners to have a really good think about their own money stories and what's happened to them in the past, with the view that once you know your money story, you can choose how to write it from this moment forward. Can't necessarily change the past, but you can reframe it and you can view it in a different way and think about your perception of it, but you can write it as you mean to go on. So my money story, and obviously how I become a money coach doing what I do, is that probably one of the biggest memories I have in my life is when I was 10 years old. And I was standing in the dinner queue at a new comprehensive school that I'd started. And notice I was 10, so I'd skipped a year of school and started there early because I had one of those funny birthdays on the 15th of September. So it was either spending a year at primary school or going to the school. Anyway, I'll explain in a minute. I just left a boarding school where I'd been for 3 years. And I was standing in this queue at school, the dinner queue, and it was the free school meals queue. And I was really, really angry, like furious. And I could feel everything crackling within me with anger. And the reason I was so angry is because we had literally just lost all our money. So coming from a wealthy family, we just lost all our money. And here I was standing in the free school dinner queue. They separated us back then. So all the free school mealers stood on the left and the people that paid were on the right. I happened to be the tallest person in what we called the first year. It's now year 7 by quite a lot. I was also the youngest. I had no friends. People were looking at me and thinking that I was the posh kid because I spoke nicely, but yet we didn't have a bean, not a bean. And I was so angry that I said, right, I am never going to be beholden to anybody for money when I grow up. I'm going to become a millionaire. And that was me setting my intention. So how did I get to that point? My mum was married and divorced 3 times by the time I was 12. My mum and dad were very different when it came to money. Mum had literally, she hadn't been parented and her father just threw money at her as when she was at boarding school. She was sent to boarding school at 7. And my dad came from humble beginnings. Mum inherited quite a lot of money just before I was born. Mum wanted to spend. And dad was busy writing everything down in a notebook to try and keep some kind of hold on the neutrality and the equality of the roles in the family. And it just didn't work. So he left when I was 1. Then husband number 2 came along quite quickly. And let's just say he was quite a feisty man and things at home weren't very pleasant. So mum's answer to it was to pack my sister and I off to boarding school. So I was 7 when I went to boarding school. Left a beautiful home on the Isle of Wight and stepped over the threshold at a boarding school in Sunningdale in Berkshire. So I was a long way away from home and pretty much instantaneously felt like the pauper, because the people that we were at school with were mega rich, like really rich. And again, all of this is my perception, right? This is not necessarily the truth, but this is how I perceived it. So my self-worth and my self-esteem took its first plummet, or took a significant plummet then. And my sister wasn't very happy there either. However, we got used to it over time. We were there for 3 years. During that time, mum managed to go through that marriage and get rid of that one. And then she chose to marry her bank manager, which sounded like a really good idea, seeing as she'd been spending quite heavily. And she wrote us a letter and she said, darlings, everything's going to be fine because I'm going to marry the bank manager. And she said, you better come home and meet him once before we get married. I said, oh, okay. He had 3 children. So we joined forces and there were now 6 kids in this family. His 3 sons, mum's 3 daughters. And we moved into this lovely big house down near in North Somerset, and with lots of work needed doing on it. It was great fun. We were still at boarding school. So a year into the marriage, he decided that he was going to allow himself to be blackmailed. And he basically gave all my mother's money away and all his mother's money away to a gangster, the whole lot. And we were left with nothing, basically. I think we were left with about 76 quid in the bank. And we split up and we moved into this tiny little damp cottage, which, don't get me wrong, is still extremely privileged compared to many, many other people. But it was a big, big change in our lives. Like, so the family was split in 2. We moved into this cottage with we all walked around with our heads sort of down because the ceilings were so low. It just wasn't what we were used to.
Yeah.
And we went to the local comprehensive school and joined the free school meals queue. Hence me standing there thinking, wow, what's happened? So I set an intention. That's the most important thing. I set an intention, and then in my own sweet way, which is very slow, very unplanned, no strategy, I was interested and started collecting money, as I call it. So I've always had a job since I was like 11 years old, worked through, and just been building wealth by hook or by crook. We got to the millionaire status on paper around 2013, 2014, I think. And the date is even blotted out in my head, but there was a very significant day when it happened. And I remember looking at my husband, Neil, who, of course, I married Neil, who had no interest in money whatsoever. We'll talk a bit about money types a bit later, but he was like 100% creator artist. Yeah. And I'll explain what that is, but they're not interested in money because I was going to be the controller, right? I was the one that was in charge of the destiny. And I remember saying to him, Neil, we've done it. So through investing, through buying the right sort of properties and all that kind of stuff, we, on the net worth, whatever that means, statement, we reached the 7th digit, whether it be by a few pounds or a few pennies, I can't remember. Yeah. So I turned to him and I went, Neil, we've done it. And he turned around to me and he said, well, it hasn't got anything to do with me, has it? And I was like, no, oh my gosh. And I thought there were going to be bells, flags, whistles, trumpets, change of life, everything amazing. And of course, nothing happened. And actually, we realized that we were miserable, like pretty miserable. Anyway, so I started thinking, this isn't right. This isn't right. I don't feel good about this. This doesn't feel nice. I don't feel fulfilled or any way balanced. And bearing in mind, number 8 is all about the balance of spiritual and material wealth. I felt very out of alignment. I felt very, pretty rubbish, really. So I started thinking a little bit more about my situation and our situation and what we were going to do and all this kind of stuff. And I started getting into the psychology of money and reading more about how we think and how we feel about it. And then I ended up I was in my job. I've been in a job working from home because my absolute love is my family. I'm totally devoted to my family. I'm a mum, first, foremost, above anything. I always will be, which is very interesting from a lady who said that she never wanted children. I now have 2 daughters, and I decided that when I had the girls, I wanted to be at home, to be with them throughout the whole of their schooling journey. And I've done that. So I've worked from home for the last 22 years, which is fantastic. I'm so blessed and actually haven't been as grateful as I should be for that. So that was another part of it, showing the gratitude for the life that I've got, showing the gratitude for the wealth that I'd built, which of course you know and I know. The attitude of gratitude, to quote Oprah Winfrey, is so important. So I just started reframing everything, and I realized that it was time to leave the job that I was in. I spent most of the time looking behind a computer screen. I was thinking, what am I going to do? Who on earth is going to employ me? I worked in film and television years ago. What on earth am I going to do? I haven't even got a CV. I don't really have any qualifications. Yeah. What am I going to do? So I went to see Louise Jenner. Do you remember Louise Jenner?
Yeah, I remember Louise, yeah.
The dream job coach. And we sat down and we had a chat, and she said, well, what are you interested in? I said, money. I like money. So she gave me a couple of books to read going away on holiday. In fact, they were called How to Be a Free Range Human by Marianne Cantwell was one. And the other one was If Piranha Make You Hungry, which is a really interesting. Yeah.
I've not heard of either of those two. That's interesting. I'll link them up in the show notes.
Yeah, I think it's something about piranhas making you hungry. It's a very interesting book, actually. I should probably go back to it. And I came back, and the idea was that I'd become a money coach and I would teach people how to do their own bookkeeping, because I created the money mapping system, which is my own system for managing personal finances, which had worked for me. So why didn't I share it with other people? So that's what I started to do. I became Fanny Snaith, the financial freedom fighter.
I remember that.
The fitness coach for your finances. A lot of F alliteration going on. And I put myself out there. I knew nothing about sales and marketing or anything like that. And I got a business card and a logo, paid, got all that sorted. And then I sat there and watched the telephone and it didn't ring.
Honey, we've all done that. I think anyone listening is going, yeah, I did that. I had the website, I had the logo. I was like, and now the customers will just find me, right?
Well, but the silly part of it is that my husband was a plumber heating engineer, and he never had to do any advertising.
No.
So why would I have? And the company that I worked for before, because I was working from home, I never saw anybody in the sales and marketing department. I never really saw all that. I just used to deal with the customers as they came through the door, and I was busy. So I know it didn't even cross my mind. I didn't even know what it was all about.
Mm-hmm.
So that was interesting. So Fanny Snaith, financial freedom fighter, fitness coach for your finances. And people did start to come and they'd pay me a certain amount of money, and I would sit down and go through the money map with them, actually help them to do their personal finances. And what I found was that just they wouldn't do it. I'd be going through all this and they'd be gazing out of the window or thinking that they, go rather be mowing the lawn or cleaning the loo. And I'd be thinking, what's the matter with you people? And it was at that point then that I really noticed that it's all about mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Managing your finances is, I would say, 80% mindset, 20% practical. In fact, managing your money is easy.
Yeah, so that's just because I'm fully aware of what your money mapping system is. It is amazing. But just for the listeners, what were you going through then? What was the sort of stuff that you were going through when people were coming for these money mapping sessions?
Well, what how does it work? You mean, how does the system work?
Was it, you were saying, they were sort of looking around and not really getting it, and then you realized it was mindset. What was it? Were you giving them quite tangible, like, do ABC and then you'll figure it out?
I didn't understand really about the mindset that much. I certainly didn't know how to teach it. So I realized that I needed to go and learn more about this. So that's when I went to the Money Coaching Institute in America, and I trained with them for, it was just over a year, I think. And then got the certification. So I'm now a certified money coach, to become a one-to-one coach. But more importantly, I think, which I love, the work is a couples money coach, which is such good fun. And also a certified business archetype coach.
Love that.
A CBAC, as we call it. A CBAC, yeah. So, and that's where I started then crafting how I work now, which is all about the financial adventure.
Mm-hmm. And this is where I want to dive in. But there's so much that you've shared. And one of the things that really stood out, I mean, my gosh, your story, as a mum myself, having done the money work, the money mindset, and being very aware of my language and things around it, the amount of times I second guess and think, oh my gosh, what lesson am I teaching my children? And hearing a story like yours, which as a mother, kind of breaks my heart listening to you and imagining you as that 7-year-old girl. I'm like, oh my gosh, it does give me hope. It certainly gives me hope that, do you think there was something you mentioned about your numerology? And I am a big believer that our souls are put on here for a particular purpose, and we kind of figure it out as we go along. But I do think, could another 10-year-old child in that free school meals queue, which is horrendous that they separated it, that also broke my heart. Another 10-year-old could have switched the other way, could have been like, this is me now, I'm poor, and now I'm going to be poor forever.
Oh, absolutely, certainly. And not only that, I could have also fallen straight into the victim mentality. So again, we're going to talk about the money types in a minute, but I remember, because I was naughty at school. So
no, that shocks me.
Well, I was naughty at boarding school. So I think the interesting part of it is that, because I work with people with their money stories, you can't just work with the money story, because this is something that I found as well when I'd gone through the Money Coaching Institute. I went through my money story. So you write it all out, and I have a template where I work with people to get their money story done, and it's such a useful document. And I wrote it out, and I was thinking, okay, so I understand all that, and now I can become a money magician. But it didn't happen. I still was sitting here feeling low self-worth, fearful, frightened. And it was only when I started looking at, again, then the relationship that I have with my mother, that the holes filled in. So when I went to boarding school, I basically larked about. I was bullied quite heavily at boarding school. First of all, I was the youngest boarder in the school at the time. And when you go to boarding school, I don't know if you know, you have to do these initiation ceremonies. And they're not particularly pleasant. I mean, they do some really, really awful things to you. I remember being forced to drink part of some of my dorm mates' urine, which was
my goodness,
one of the tests. So it's all particularly unpleasant. But you're right. So I remember going at school, secondary school this is, and I'd done something again, and I was standing outside beside my housemaster's office. And I could hear the teachers talking about me inside this tiny little office where they're all in there. And they said, look, don't be too hard on her, because her mum's on to her third marriage. At the school, she's got her real sister. She's got 3 stepbrothers as well. And I think there's another half sister somewhere. So this is like a seriously proper broken home kind of thing. So, it's no wonder I sort of appreciate that. My take on that was I was standing outside rubbing my hands with glee, thinking, yes, cracked it. And I was also, so I think what happened to me was I took it all on board, and I put a massive, great sticking plaster over the top. And actually, when other parents were getting divorced and they all went into victim, I went, for God's sake, come on, just get on with it. And it's fine. And just got to make the most of it. And whereas I'm really pleased that I did that at the time, I think it covered up a lot of my vulnerability as I got older. And it's, of recent years, and when we start on that personal development journey, which obviously so much about as well, once you start on that, you can't go backwards. And it, like with my financial adventure, I say to people, look, if you're going to go on your financial adventure, we're not talking Dora the Explorer here. We are talking more likely Indiana Jones.
Yeah, it's more of a Tomb Raider situation, isn't it, really?
Damn right. You are gonna find out that you're running down a corridor with a fireball chasing you, and with a nest of vipers that you'll probably have to dive into at the end. But you're gonna come out okay. It's gonna be okay through there. Yeah. But we're not, it's not sort of like a nice little cartoon. So I could have gone the other way. I could have absolutely gone the other way, and I could have felt very sorry for myself. I could have withdrawn inside. I could have done all sorts, which is interesting because my mother, whereas I look back on her now with a huge amount of fondness, at the time, she wanted us to be so special that we were almost incapable. It was impossible for us to come up to her expectations. And she freely would tell us how disappointed she was in all of us. She would actually sit us down to tell us how disappointed she was in all of us, which, is very sad. And I could look at that with venom and, how awful she was. But I know that she was just trying to do the best she could with what she had. She used to, to tell me to shut up and sit down and stop showing off after she'd asked me to stand up and sing and dance. And it all sounds like I'm feeling terribly sorry for myself. And I probably did for a little while, but not then. That sort of happened later. I think I just put a massive, great sticking plaster over it and went straight into warrior, went straight into, right, I'm going to have to be strong.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's fascinating. So I definitely want to dive into the archetypes, because that is really, really fascinating, about how they sort of come about. And I love the way you explain it as a financial adventure. Just to sort of round up that part for those listening, I think for me as well, once you have done the work to uncover your money story, there are some parts that will need healing. And you, like you said, you have that kind of like, oh, I'm in a pit of vipers now. This isn't very, very pleasant. But equally, I think there has to come a point where you're like, okay, it was in the past. Like, this was my money story. And I think you said at the very beginning, it's about writing your money story, moving on now. Like, you get to write the rest of the book. Yeah. It's not about kind of going, oh, well, I can't do this because, you know, my dad said this when I was 8. And it's like, you know, yes, heal the wounds. And like you mentioned, self-worth, which is absolutely a huge one. But there is that point where you're like, okay, you know, it's not going over reading the old chapters again and again and again and again.
Yeah. I remember I heard a phrase which I absolutely loved, which says, you know, let's not get into trauma tourism.
Yes.
You know, and this is the thing. I think you go back over all of those things, and you know, you could say, Fanny, why do you keep telling your story over and over again? Why do you keep telling your story? I think I tell the story because I came out of it well. I think that, you know, it wasn't a case of I didn't go into victim at the time. It wasn't a perfect response. I think from that particular, to my age, I mean, I'm going to be 58 this year. From my age of that time, children were still very much in this be seen and not heard. My mum was very much dust yourself down and just get on with things. And that was how I learned how to put the sticking plaster over everything, you know, just cover it up and just pretend everything's okay. Yes, that vulnerability. And this is the point, I suppose. It's about breaking open that shell, or as my fantastic teacher, Deborah Price, the CEO of the Money Coaching Institute, would say, that peeling the layers off the onion. You know, you go through the hard brown skin, and that's sort of, you know, you crack that open with the knife, and then you start going into peeling off the layers. And that's usually when you start to cry.
Yeah.
Right. And then, but eventually you come to the sweet spot in the middle. I think the caveat with that is, as you'll probably know, is when you get to the sweet spot in the onion, another onion comes along. And when you can accept that and know that the onions are just going to keep coming, it's all just a journey. So, and this is why I found with people getting onto that adventure, if you're going to go through your life, your financial life, or any part of your life, enduring it, then you're not living. So, and that was what I found with me. I had it endured becoming a millionaire. What the hell's the point of that? So that was the point when I just tried to switch it around and just turn it into an adventure, so that if you can approach everything with curiosity and we'll just explore it with curiosity, courage, and a little bit of fun. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I am nobody. I can't preach that I've been perfect. I actually told myself that money is a financial adventure almost as affirmation. I didn't have a switch overnight. I had to say that over and over and over and over and over in order for me to turn it into an adventure. And I still play with that, you know, and that's one of the reasons, again, why I love working with people, because I'm doing my own work.
Yeah, of course. We all are, aren't we? All the time. Because like you said, once you go through all those layers and you get to that sweet spot, another onion comes along. But what I do love now, and exactly what you said about the curiosity, you know, the phrase people will hear me say all the time, like, oh, isn't that interesting? Oh, look at what I just said. Oh, I just did that. And then that onion, the next onion that comes along, you're like, oh, I can get through this. Like, and you're peeling off the layers super, super quick. And you're like, oh, it's good. Whereas when you first get into this work, oh my God, that onion feels like a metropolis. You're just like, oh God, it's never going to end.
It's interesting. And, you know, the other thing that I've been focusing on a lot recently, and I think probably prompted to focus more on it by our friend Jim Fortin, who I know you know, and I started listening to his podcast, and I'm a big fan of his. I think one of the reasons I'm a big fan, I recommend it to any of your listeners to listen to him, is that he really says it how it is.
Eventually.
He doesn't, but I like his straightforwardness, and he's helped me to be a lot more straightforward with my clients. and focusing on the identity, because I was sort of going, I was one of those people that was going, I can't stand all these people that are talking about goals and all these things. And I would sit back from goals because you don't want to put yourself on the line, right? You're not pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And I was just thinking, no, that's not for me. I'll do things in my own sweet way. Look, I've got this far. I can keep moving forward. But what I then had to cross that bridge of is going, if you are actually going to change your identity, of who you are around this, you do have to commit to something and you do have to push through. And the only time that commitment is really tested is when you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Like, looking at your finances every day, signing up to the wonderful app Money Dashboard, for instance, which is what I use, I promote to my clients to use as their compass. So they've done your money map, then you have your compass, which is the money dashboard, because it makes it so easy to do your finances at the end of the month. Just look at it every day, tag the transactions as they go through every day over a coffee. And it'd be so easy not to do that. And I bet, and I know that you have things in your life that you think you should do, you'd like to do, or you'd be better off doing. And we fail. But when we fail, we get back up and we start again.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about how we can help the listeners go on their own financial adventure.
Okay. So the first thing is, I would say, if you want to go on an adventure rather than an endurance test, is to just sit with yourself for a minute and decide what you want to do. To actually think about, do you want to change things for you around money or not? I think that's a really important decision to make, because if you're going to come to the table going, well, I know I should, but I don't really want to, I'm just going to have to do it. Things are so bad now that I'm going to have to do something. You're not starting off with the right foot on the floor, as it were. So actually sit down with yourself for 5 minutes and just say, what do I actually want to do? And we all know, I'm not asking you to set goals. I'm not asking you to necessarily commit to something, but just feel into whether you really do want to make a change, or if you're just going to sign up to something and then fanny about with it. I'm allowed to say that.
Yeah.
So let's say you've made the decision that you really do want to change. So I would then say, cut out as much as you can all the things that you're supposed to know. So change your view about money and think that you're starting from literally the first step on the path to wherever you're going. And just suppose that you know nothing, because then you're taking away a lot of the chances to fail. Because if you're not supposed to know it, if you don't think you're supposed to know it, then that's okay, isn't it? So you can approach it with a different thing. So I say things like, what about if you were going to learn a language like Chinese or Russian or something that's just so alien to you? You have to start at the beginning. Treat money like that. And then you'll have a lot of self-affirming of all the things that you do know, because you've already got a bank account. You possibly already got a credit card. So you had the ability to go and open that bank account or open that credit card. Might not necessarily have worked with it that well since you did that, but you already have a direct debit paid for the electricity? So you know how to set up a direct debit. Have you got any standing orders that you pay to friends or anything? So you know how to do that then. And all these, and you'll start to go, actually, maybe I do know quite a lot. So you're motivated. You've got a little bit of motivation because you've already got tucked quite a lot of it under your belt. So when we're talking about the financial adventure, first thing, explore, curiosity, courage. So the things you're going to need for your financial adventure, for any adventure, you're going to need a map, a compass, the fitness and motivation to want to go and be fit to go, and a destination. Got to know where you're going. So those four things. Your map is going to be your boring budget. Call it. I like to call it a money map. It's not just a posh name for a budget. The money map that I use is different because we look at different, not only what you spend your money on, but how you spend your money, like, what sort of things. And what we're doing is we're basically smoothing cash flow like you do in a business. We're thinking about Christmas in January. We're thinking about holidays in 12 months before you go, etc. So you're living your financial life practically on the front foot, which just feels so good, right? Takes work to get there, but it feels so good. Then you have your compass. So you've made your map. You've mapped out, giving every pound a purpose. Then you use your compass to stay on track. I personally love Money Dashboard. Oh, if you want to think about banking as well, I just love these challenger banks. So Starling, Monzo, etc., because you have the current account in the middle, but then you can set up spaces or pots. Yes. There's spaces for Starling, pots for Monzo, and you can start having a little direct debit or standing order or whatever it is, an automatic payment, I think they call them now, to go from your main account into the Christmas pot.
Yes.
Right.
I'm a huge fan of, I moved my business banking to Starling after your little, I saw your little workshop and I was like, why am I not doing this? And it's just brilliant. It's just fabulous. Really, really good.
It's really good. So that's that. Compass, Money Dashboard, Money Dashboard, Money Dashboard, Money Dashboard, Money Dashboard, Money Dashboard, Money Dashboard. Just been bought by ClearScore, by the way. So there could be some exciting stuff going on with Money Dashboard. I get nothing from Money Dashboard. Yes, I have done work for them before in the past, but it's brilliant. I love them. Then you need your destination. Decide what you want. What do you want to do? Maybe you're a bit fearful, first of all, to say, I want to be a millionaire or I want to have a big house in the country, because the thing is, when we're talking about identity, you're not going to be able to set a goal that seems out of your reach. And if you're feeling that you're rubbish with money and your self-worth is not great and you don't earn enough money and you're chasing bills and all this kind of stuff, to actually imagine yourself in a fairy castle is probably going to be a little bit difficult for you, first of all. It's not going to be, it's going to be out of your context.
And and I know we're going to talk about the mindset piece because that's the key. But I think that's a huge, huge switch, I think, for people. That's a hard one. We hear that, visualize your future, but if you're kind of going, oh yeah, I'll have this, and you've never even left the country and you're like, I'm going to live in Barbados and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, you might be consciously thinking that, but your heart and soul is going, well, not you. You don't do that. You've lived in a council flat your whole life. It's not going to happen.
Exactly.
And it's a big change.
Well, it's because you're trying to visualize something with the pair of glasses that you're wearing with your current, from where you are. Yes. And if you could imagine yourself standing in a room, I don't know, I'm in my office here. If I was then to try and imagine myself or see myself in a posh office in Buckingham Palace Road, for instance, I just picked it, has no desire for me, but let's just say you wanted to do that. Yeah. I'm going to actually have to sit there and visualize that. I'm going to have to sit there and I'm going to have to feel the seat that I'm sitting in. I'm going to have to feel the clothes that I'm wearing. I'm going to have to know what color the wallpaper is and where the clock is on the wall and the stairs that get up to that office. And I'm going to have to live that moment in order to retrain my brain, change those neuro pathways out of my brain to go from the room that I'm in now to the room that I'm in there. And then what I will do is I will then visualize how I got there rather than how to get there. And I think that's one of the faults that comes up, is that we go, oh, well, I'd like to go and live in Barbados. But then we start going, yeah, but how would I do that? That's not, and you start thinking the practicalities. Forget all that. Did I tell you that I'm actually studying to become a cognitive hypnotherapist at the minute?
Yes, you did.
Oh my God, it's
very
so exciting. I mean, I've literally just started, but it's like, it's so good. I'm really, really excited. And I noticed that I've been doing that kind of work with people anyway, but yeah, it's good. So fitness, motivation, mindset is everything, and that is going to affect how you set your destination. So I often say to people, just if it helps, just set a destination, a now destination. So like, for instance, get all your debts into a snowball debt destroyer and then work on making them all, as many of them as you can, 0% by doing switches or talking to your credit card or your bank provider, etc. So that you're just moving one step further forward. But eventually, you're going to have to be a little bit brave and step outside your comfort zone. And again, I'm working on that too. You know, I mean, I remember as well when I became millionaire, blah, blah, blah. I never thought then about what next. You know, I'd had this massive goal, this intention. I call it an intention rather than a goal. And I never thought, well, now what? So I called myself for a while, in retrospect, the rudderless millionaire. Yeah. Because I was just drifting. And this is what people have with now, this is a brilliant way to segue into the money types. So we've got our adventure, right? Let's go back on this. We've got our adventure. We've got the map, the compass, the fitness and motivation and the destination. So let's now move into how you're going to travel. So I'm going to give you a really nice tour bus to go on your travels. That's how you're going to get there. You're not on foot, no dusty backpacks or anything like that. You're in a beautiful, luxurious tour bus. Single decker, but it's nice. Then people say to me, but how do I work out where my mindset is properly? And I go, that can be tricky, but I have a tool. And I learned this at the Money Coaching Institute. I was introduced to the 8 money types. Is it okay to talk about this now?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Let's go for it.
So the 8 money types are 8 fictional characters who all think and behave very differently when it comes to money. Quick run through: innocent, head in the sand, seeks rescue, happy on the outside, anxious on the inside. Victim, always somebody else's fault. Lives in the past, quite angry sometimes, can be prone to addiction, whether that be shopping, sex, alcohol, drugs, whatever. Then we've got the warrior, the money type of action. We like that. The warrior is great, always going to be financially successful, open to learning, wise, loyal, all that kind of thing. Then we've got the martyr, spends most of the time knackered because they're servicing everybody else rather than themselves. We call it the money type of service. Prone to perfection, you know, well, if I don't do it, who else is going to do it? Resentful, disappointed in others because they don't come up to your standards. Then we've got the fool, roller coaster of a financial life. Due diligence is not really in their vocabulary. Money is a bit of a sport, loves to go for really good deals, loves to go for things, but doesn't really think about the consequences, lives for today, doesn't think about the future. A fool and his money is soon parted is quite an accurate description. Lovely, really nice, but seriously, just got to get a grip on it all a bit, really. Then we've got the creator artist, which I frame as the tree hugger. So they're the ones that are going to say money's not really important to me. Remember my husband? I said he was.
Yes, I was just thinking that. He's like, he's a tree hugger.
So it's like totally detached from money. It's got nothing to do with me. I don't need to don't live in a materialistic world. How can I be rich when there are so many starving children in the world? It can be quite torturous for the creator artist. You think of old artists as we see them. They're never, they've always got to be poor, scrabbling around for food, living in a sort of like a just about enoughness. I can only have enough just to pay the bills, and that's where I am. And yeah. But the creator artist is very internally motivated, which is lovely, got a lovely spiritual side, and believes that they need to be authentic as well, which is great. However, there's a big but when it's like they push money away because they don't deserve it and all that kind of stuff. Tyrant, opposite. Tyrant would basically throw the creator artist under a bus, as they would throw any of their colleagues under a bus to save their own skin. All about money. You've got to be financially successful for people to like you and to love you. What they have to realize is that this was me when I was collecting money, really. I turned into a bit of tyrant with a 100% creator artist husband, that I've got to do this, got to do this, got to do this, got to do this. It's moving past warrior and actually into sort of tyranny, because you become a little bit controlling and a bit manipulative. But it's all done through fear. It's all done through fear, because you want to be loved, you want to have friends, you want to feel safe and secure and all that kind of stuff. and what we really want, money can't actually buy.
Yeah.
It was awful. And then finally, we've got the magician, which is the money type of faith, trust, and balance. So that's the one that we want to have in charge. And they're conscious, wise, open to flow, unattached from the outcome of the decisions that they've made because they're happy and balanced in their decisions, warm, loving, powerful, just all the
good things.
Yeah, it's like amazing. So we've got those 8 money types. They are the passengers on your tour bus. Right? So my question to you is, to anyone listening, is when you think about those money types, we have all of them within us. All of them within us. Everybody does. They don't tell us who we are. They tell us where we are. They're very dynamic, not like some of these other money personality quizzes, etc. Because I have a quiz on my website, by the way, to help you find out which are your active money types now. It's not your money personality. It's just going to indicate which ones are driving your financial life right now. So my question is, who's driving your financial life? Who is? There was a writer, Ayn Rand, back in the 30s, I think it was, and she wrote a brilliant quote. Which was, money is simply a tool, and it will take you wherever you wish to go, but it will not replace you as the driver. So who's driving your financial life? One of the interesting things is when people take the money type quiz on my website, they say to me, well, your website, your quiz doesn't work, Fanny, because I don't have any active money types, which is over 50%. And I say to them, well, so who's at the wheel then? Nobody.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody's driving. La, 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 la. The bus is moving, by the way.
Yeah.
But who's at the wheel? Nobody. So where are you headed? You're not on your map. You haven't got a map. So what we tend to see is we have people traveling this tour bus, hurtling along down this lane. No map, no compass, no destination, and all of the money types sitting there twiddling their thumbs or texting their mates.
Yeah.
Drinking coffee.
You paint such a vivid picture, because I think that's what most of us do, don't we? And I was thinking, as you were talking, I was like, because I've done your quiz and it is amazing. I recommend everyone does the quiz. Who doesn't love a quiz? And I remember, coming out of it with the warrior and magician at the time, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to do it again. But when you were talking, I was thinking, I think my driver takes a nap and then someone takes over. I think it happens about 5 times a day. It just depends on, maybe not every day, but you kind of think, well, yeah, there are going to be times when, I'm wondering if people were listening to the descriptions of those archetypes and going, well, yeah, I resonate with actually probably a bit of those. And depending on whether I'm in a good mood or a bad mood, depends on which one's going to be driving.
For sure, absolutely, for sure. And this is the thing, it's totally dynamic. I think the thing to know is that it's a framework. It's a framework to work by. I think it's very difficult to notice our behavior without a framework to get conscious and aware about. So that wasn't very well described. So you could sort of go, oh, well, I'm feeling really awkward. I'm feeling really uncomfortable about money. It's much easier if you can go, my innocence at the wheel today. Because if I know that the innocence at the wheel, I don't know what to do. I'm feeling lack of security. I'm anxious, got an anxious feeling in my tummy. So you go, right, innocence definitely at the wheel. What do I need to do? How do I change this? You go, okay, what would the warrior do? And what would the magician do? And then you can look at the descriptions and the traits of the warrior and magician, and you can go, okay. Oh, so I'm not expected to know how to do this. I'm going to need to ask for help. So it's a way of moving from one state to another. So I think it's brilliant if you can pin the behavior on one of the money types. So you can then use that to facilitate change. And indeed, we say at the Money Coaching Institute, if you can name it, you can change it.
Yeah, I love that, because I think as well, it takes the blame a way, when you have that level of awareness of how you're acting and what's going on, to be able to go, oh, hello, innocent archetype. Oh, hang on, I've fallen into a bit of the tyrant.
Yeah.
That's not like, oh my God, I'm such a bad person. Oh my God, I can't do this. It's me. It's like, no, it's just part of how you're showing up today. And I think that level of awareness around money, especially at the time we're living through now, where, I mean, I don't listen to the news, I haven't done for years, but, you know, you could absolutely, regardless of what's going on in your own money story and your own life, you could absolutely be sunk into a kind of, there's no money in the world, we're all going to starve and everything's broken, you know, and having that realization of how you're feeling, and then which archetype has then taken the wheel because you fall into this whole fear mode. I think that really helps people not blame themselves. I think that's the thing we need to be careful of. It's like, you're not a bad person because you can't manage your money, or you haven't managed your money up until now.
Yeah.
It's making that decision to go, all right, you know, you're going to speak to someone like you, or you're going to take this quiz and you're going to find out and get that knowledge that you need to have that level of awareness that you need.
Yeah. I mean, guilt and shame is huge. For guilt and shame are massive emotions when it comes to money. I feel guilt and shame sometimes. I think there's an interesting test. So, you know, sometimes when you're flicking through one of those Hello magazines you pick up at the dentist, I'm never going to confess that I don't buy them ever, but I do have to say it. It's a little bit of a guilty pleasure. If I'm going to the doctor, there might be a Hello magazine there. You know. Yeah. And then you're flicking through it, and you see, I don't know, some celebrity there in their gorgeous house with their gorgeous thing. First of all, it's note what feelings come up. How do you feel? Do you feel jealousy? Do you feel, I don't know what, there can be all sorts of emotions that come up. And then you start thinking a bit deeper and you go, well, hang on a minute, does this person actually live here, or is it just a photo shoot somewhere else? And who's given them all the clothes? And this person goes home, and what happens to them when they go home? But we find it so easy to live in a fantasy world of looking outside and assuming that fantasy is real, whereas it isn't. The only world that we need to really worry about is our own. And yes, I know that there's lots of horrible things happening to people all over the world, but if you can't control it, there's only a certain amount that you can do, you know. I'm due to phone a lady today who's got some charity in Sri Lanka. My sister-in-law phoned me up. She goes, I need your help because this lady needs some publicity. I was thinking, okay, I'll phone her up. And then this morning, the news about Sri Lanka, we're recording this in July, and it's like, the news about Sri Lanka came up, which was just awful, the things that are going on there. I can't actually control those things. But yes, I can do one thing to help this lady. But then the most important thing is for me to focus on my life and actually get myself to be in the best position that I can be in to help as many people as I can possibly help. And that's when you start to suddenly feel, whoa, I'm feeling like a bit of a balance coming in here. I'm feeling like a bit of a calm alignment coming in here. Yeah. Because let's face it, and this again is another thing I think I heard from Jim Fortin. People think about what's their purpose and what's their why and why we're here. Surely the sole purpose that we have to be here is to become at peace and in alignment with ourselves. Because if you do that, you can't go wrong, because you're going to be shining your light as bright as it can possibly be. Yeah. And it's not all about money. It's not all about having a lovely car and all these kind of things. It's just, you know, for me, I'm not a materialistic person. I never really have been. I like to do nice things and have nice things, but it's not something that really bothers me. And it used to bother me that I wasn't bothered about it. How crazy is that?
I know, me too. I thought that was a money mindset issue for myself. I was like, oh, I don't want a massive Range Rover. Oh my God, I don't want Jimmy Choo's. I must have a block somewhere. There must be something wrong with me. I just don't care about this stuff.
I had a business coach come to me once. He's like, you know, really, this pretty well-known business coach. And he came to me and he goes, I've got a problem, Fanny. I can't, you know, people keep on telling me to go out and spend all this money on things, but I just don't want these things. And I said, well, has it actually ever occurred to you that you're actually okay and what you're thinking is what's right for you? And he went, Actually, no, I didn't. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's okay, is it? I go, well, you don't need me to tell you that it's okay. You need to decide from within you that it's okay. But it's possible consideration.
Exactly. And I think it's really interesting because I do have friends in, if you want to look like on all scales of the wealth spectrum, if you like, some that are really struggling, some that are doing very, very well for themselves. But I do see the thing that I've always been really mindful of, and it's something I've only learned probably in the last sort of 3 or 4 years, is be careful of the chase, like chasing the next thing and the next thing and then the next thing. And I just think, I spent most of my 20s and 30s chasing the next thing, the bigger house, the nicer car, the nicer clothes, and, the stuff to kind of go, oh, look, you can tell that I'm doing really well because I've got this stuff and I've got this car. And I think working from a place of desire and something you said as well, getting clear about actually, well, what is it that you want to do? And having, I loved what you said about, I think, I can't remember the exact word you used, but it was about having a goal for now or an intention for now. Like, great, have a far-flung future vision for your life and where you want your money to be. But actually, if right now or in the next month you could get to a point where you can put, say, 50 quid in a savings account, great. And I find it a lot easier. I have very, very big, long visions, but they have to be chunked down. Has to be. Otherwise it comes so overwhelming of like, well, how am I going to go from here to here? Like you said, like figuring out the house, like it becomes too much, doesn't it?
Exactly. So this is a perfect example. People say, there's the phrase, I can't afford to save. Okay. That's a myth. I can't afford to, and there are going to be possibly some people listening who are going to go, well, I can't. I'm sorry, but it's wrong. And it's a mindset. The most important thing about that phrase is it does damage to your mindset. It's not helpful. So what I would say is every single person can afford to save, because what you can do, okay, let's make the caveat that if you're homeless on the street or whatever, then there could be some instances, but I would say 99.9% of the people in this country, for a start,
if they're listening to this podcast,
you're listening to this podcast, so go and get. I'm sure. I mean, I don't know any family that doesn't eat pesto, so just go and get a pesto jar or a jam jar or something like that. Wash it out, cover it with paper so you can't see the inside. Then stick a sticker over the top that says savings on it. Get the lid and punch a hole in the top and drop a penny in that jar, and you are now a saver, right? And put a penny in that jar once a month, once a week, once a day, whatever. But by doing that, you cannot say, I cannot afford to save anymore. And that is a mindset change like that, like a click of the fingers. You've changed it. And maybe once you started doing that, you could then put 2p in or 5p or £1 or whatever. But do you see, that's about the mindset. The mindset is stopping you doing anything practical because you're living with this fake BS belief that you can't afford to save. And it's just not true.
I really think, and what I'm about to say now, I'm sure is going to be a bit of an unpopular opinion, but listeners know that doesn't stop me. So I see quite a lot, and I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but people that I was actually in a pub and there was a table behind me, blokes and women there around my age, a few empty glasses. They'd obviously been there a little while, talking about got no money for this, got no money for that. And I can't help, my coaching brain never switches off, and I'm like, really? Because I'm pretty sure it's about a £5 a pint in this place, and you've all got a couple of glasses by you. That's a tenner each. Even if it was just, who knows how long they've been there, but I'm like, you do have money because you're privileged enough to be sitting in a pub paying £5 for a pint, and you could have bought a pack of 4 in the supermarket for 3 quid or so. I don't know how much beer it is, but I do feel sometimes we need to kind of be aware of again, like you were saying, be aware of the life that we're living. And it's like, actually, you can afford to live because you're sat in a pub, love.
Well, this is the thing though, isn't it? I mean, most of our parents would say we can't afford it. We can't afford it. We can't afford it. We haven't got any money. We can't afford it. It's just a phrase. It means nothing. This is what I always say to people when they're talking in front of their children. Please don't say you can't afford it. Just say, we're just not choosing to spend our money that way right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you are making that choice 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
And we do have to sacrifice things.
And I think that's a difficult thing. Certainly I'm, just turned 40. And I think I grew up with a family who were like, can't afford it, whatever. We could afford absolutely everything we needed. But I've also grown up as someone who I'm like, oh, well, if I can't have it, I'll just get a credit card. Oh, well, if I can't have it right now, I'll just do this. I'm like, I don't need to save. MBNA love me. They'll just give me a different colour card and I can go and have whatever I want. And
exactly.
I don't think, the other day I was chatting to a friend and she's like, how are you finding it? I was like, oh my God, my bills have gone through the roof. And I was like, but there are things that are non-negotiable for me. I will not. She's like, well, you could save a fortune not having your Nespresso coffee. I was like, that ain't changing. I was like, I have my non-negotiables. I could save a fortune going down to a jar of instant, but I'd be miserable and you wouldn't like me. So, however, there are other things in my life I can absolutely cut a little bit more. Don't fill up my car so much. There are things we can do if we take responsibility. And I'm not, there are people who are in a very, very difficult situation and I'm very privileged to be in the situation I'm in. But I do feel that we need to be mindful of the choices we make with our money. And it's the conversation I have to have with my children of like, I'm not saying no to sweets every time we go into a shop because I'm being mean, or I'm not saying, no, you can't have that magazine because I'm being mean, but your desire for it has lasted 30 seconds and it's going to cost me a fire. And I'm not willing to spend that money on that because it's poor value and you'll forget about it by the time we're out of the shop.
You're totally right. And it's the course that I run for the group course, also like the entry level, but oh my goodness, deliver so much value to people because I love doing this course. It's called My Money Makeover. I actually aim this now at middle income earners because I think I class myself as a middle income earner. We've had it really good for the last 10, 12 years or 10 years. We've had it really, really good. And for most middle income earners, you've had a situation whereby you can get away with not looking at your bank account. So you sort of look at it and you go, oh, yeah, it looks okay. And then you can look at your credit card statement and it's not too bad. You can keep up with those. And it's all been okay. And maybe you haven't been building up a savings pot or you've been investing a little bit. You're probably investing into your pension at work. So you think that's great. That's enough to be for the future, etc. The problem with this is that especially for the middle income earners, if you don't do something about it now, stuff is going to start slipping. I mean, they're saying, I sort of did a bit of a rough workout back in April or May, I think it was. That it's thinking I needed about another 15 to 20%. I needed a 15 to 20% rise in my income. Now, in order to cope with the price hikes. And because I'm self-employed, I can do that. I can actually go, right, I need to earn this much more money. I've also got a daughter starting at university this year, yikes, and all that kind of stuff. So, I said, right, I need to ramp up my income. I can do that. There are a lot of people who go to work or if they're in a job that are not going to automatically think, how can I increase my income? Well, I can't, overtime's a thing of the past or whatever. But if you're not managing your finances properly, like as an adventure with a map, or if you're sort of actually, maybe you're not even enduring them. It's sort of just in the middle. You've got nobody really at the driver of your tour bus. Are you heading for a cliff? That's the thing. I would say that you are, if you're not doing anything about it now. And this is me waving the flag to say, you really do need to do something now, because if not, it's not going to sustain if you're in a driverless bus.
Yeah. And it's absolutely true. And I think you're right, middle income people, I would certainly class myself as a middle income person. And when I had a husband as well, it would be like, oh, well, all the money I'm making, I can invest here, I can do this, I can do that, because I've also got someone who's bringing in money. as a single mum now for the last couple of years, I'm just like, right, this is all on me. I really need, I've luckily got myself into a fairly good position, but I was like, I really need to take full responsibility of this now and make sure that your phrase, I'm probably going to bodge it now, but every pound has a purpose.
Yeah.
That if they take anything away, every pound should have a purpose. Whereas, because I pay with everything from my phone, and I'm sure everyone listening, you just pay with your card. It's not even real. It just disappears out of your account. You're like, what did I spend that on?
Yeah. I was working with a couple recently, and my fee at the time is since increased, but for a couples coaching program was £5,500. And they recouped that money in 8 weeks.
Wow. Amazing.
This is the thing. And if you think about debt and interest rates and just paying interest, we're still paying around £126 million on credit card and personal loan interest every day.
Oh, every day.
Every day.
Wow.
Not mortgages.
Wow.
Just credit card and personal loan interest.
That's just blown my mind. I mean, I like I said, I used to be that person. I had 25 grand of credit card debt at one point, and but it was fine because I was, it was all 0%. I was like a credit card tart. I've just moved it from one to the other. I'm like, this is fine. This is just, I'll pay it off, but not now because I want my money to do fun things and I want to go on holiday. And then, I think it was when I met you, I was like, I really need to get serious about this. I can't keep having these credit cards and just flip them from one to the other. I'm going to run out of credit card companies. I think that's what happened. And I was like, oh, I've got one with every company now. So I should probably do what Fanny said I should do.
I think the thing to remember is there's a debt to income ratio where you look at your level of debt, in a ratio to how much income you've got. And if I like to keep mine below 10%. If you're going more than sort of 20, 30%, you need to start thinking about it. Really. It can run out of control pretty quickly. Yeah. And with interest rates rising, which is going to affect you massively as a borrower, especially if you're going to have to renegotiate your mortgage coming up, you're going to see a huge rise. And yet for your savings, it's going to do sweet Fanny Adams.
100%.
Exactly. So there's a real tug, there's a real pull. There's a big divide going on, and I see a lot of middle income earners who are, we're getting split. So a lot of middle income earners who are hanging on by their fingernails, which is where a buffer and savings and investments and thinking about the future is just so important. Really, really important.
Yeah, and I think
we're not going to end on this depressing.
Oh no, I was just about to say the great thing is, because 3D reality that we live in, this is where people are struggling. And I just wanted to sort of keep it real that people might be listening to this going, well, this is all well and good, but I'm already at like the holy moly, what the hell do I do stage.
Yeah.
Once people know and get their mindset on track. Once they know who's driving that bus, once they know and change it up from an endurance task to an adventure, from my own experience, that is where it shifts. Yeah. And that is where we then have the personal power to go, okay, I'm not going to be a victim here. I'm not going to be like, okay, well, the government have screwed me over, so I'm just going to sit here and cry about it. No, I'm actually going to get off my tush and I'm going to do something, bring back that personal power piece and look at our finances. I know it can be scary, but actually
look at yourself and look at yourself. If you're not earning good money, why not? Right? What is it that is about you and your identity of yourself that is repelling the money from coming into your life? There's enough money on this planet for every single person to be a millionaire.
Yeah.
So there's not as if there's a shortage of money. There's not as if there's a shortage of customers. There's not as if there's a shortage of anything. I speak to people who are like amazing. I spoke to a lady the other day, and she's a dog groomer, and she got fed up with dog grooming because she didn't feel that she was able to earn enough money. She now sells doggy toothbrushes. She's crafted the business so beautifully that there's videos that go with it. Her turnover on some months is like incredible, fantastic. And it's just such the most amazing story. So one, anybody can do this. It's like I said to a family member. She's going, well, I can't earn any more money. And I go, the skills, talents, and abilities that you have. Well, what? I use all my energy and everything in my job. I said, how much more do you need to earn? Not much, really. And I said, well, why don't you start doing some private tuition? I don't have time. I'm too tired. Just try it. Just try and get one a week. So she now has 2 a week, it's an extra 70 quid a week. That just makes that difference to her budget. But sometimes we need to live outside the box, go outside the box. I do some delivery of workshops in London for people who've been long-term unemployed and who might also have minor mental health things going on. And I was delivering one day and there was this guy listening to me, camera off. And I was talking about how to get out of debt and all this kind of stuff. And he just kept on chipping in with these amazing things. And I just went, excuse me, can I just ask you, how do you know all this stuff? And he goes, oh, well, last year I was thousands of pounds in debt. He told me how much it was. I can't remember exactly how much it was. And he said, and I've learned loads while I'm paying it off. I said, how much have you paid off? And he said, I've paid off 9,000 in a year. And I was like, whoa. I said, are you employed? He goes, I am, but it's just part-time. And I said, you've managed it. I said, why aren't you doing what I'm doing? He goes, oh, well, I can't. I'm not an expert like you. And I went, well, I don't know about that, actually. You're coming up with some new things that I haven't heard about. And I said, and anyway, who said I was an expert? You crafted me as the expert. Yeah. I craft myself as a bit of an expert, but you gave that to me. I said, but look at you. And he said, yeah, but I couldn't do what you do because I'm still in debt. I said, you only need to be a couple of steps or one step ahead of the people that you're helping. So that's what he went off and did. You know, amazing. It's like crazy. And it's really just starting to think about how you can invest in yourself, increase your skills, and go out there and do something different. Just move. Who was it? I can't remember the name of the occult member, but what is it? Fear is the idleness of the mind. And this is the thing, we get stuck in our comfort zone, not being able to move anywhere. And it's, and you're frightened to do anything. But actually, it's laziness if you look at it, because you can always overcome fear, but you've got to have that spark to do it. Got to have that spark to it. One last thing I'd like to say to people, if there are people listening who are really struggling with debt, like seriously struggling with debt, before you go to system advice or step change or think about IDAs and all that kind of thing, I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but one step that you could take before that is to get onto YouTube and search for a guy called Oye, O-Y-E. Just search in YouTube for Oye debt. And he knows so much about it, and he's got some fantastic videos, but that's your learning before you go and put yourself in the hands of the step change and the systems and advice, who will be literally, you're looking there for some kind of rescue going in there. There may be other things that you can do first. So I would do that. That's amazing. I'll make sure that's in the show notes. That's really, really useful, because knowledge is the power. And once you've got the knowledge, you can take action. And you're not supposed to know anything, because nobody actually ever taught you, right? Exactly. I mean, my God, that could be a whole other episode of why we're not taught in schools, all the other stuff we're taught. Where can people find out about the archetypes from you? How can they take that quiz? On my website, which is very easy, is www.fannysnaith.com. And there's the money type quiz on there. And then there's a link to the courses that I do, either DIY or group courses. And obviously there's one-to-one coaching as well, and all sorts of things, and blah, blah, blah. No, it's absolutely, I mean, I've known Fanny many years now, and the archetype quiz is really eye-opening. But I have to say the money mapping as well. If you're listening to this going, okay, well, I think my money mindset is all right, but I'm still just not managing it that well. The money mapping is, and there's a little course. Yeah, I've now done a DIY course where you can do that. But I've said, I make it very clear at the beginning, is that this is nothing about mindset. It's literally just the practical side. Yeah. But you can always have a go. And the thing is, if you fail, if you don't do it, failure is great, because it's showing you the next step. It just shows you the next step to go. So if you buy it and you have a go and you go, oh, well, I didn't really do it. Don't leave that. Go, I didn't really do it. Why didn't I do it? What do I need to do in order to move forward with it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been amazing having you on. There are so many different avenues that we could talk about. I have to get you back on. But it's been great having you on, and thank you so much. I really hope this has given people the motivation to really start looking at their finances as more of a financial adventure, so that they realize that they can be the one in the driver's seat.
Yeah, absolutely. They can be. Well, they want the magician and warrior. It doesn't even have to be you. Just know that you have a warrior and a magician inside of you, and they're there available to you. It's just your job to find them and put them behind the wheel. And it's not as hard as you think.
So good. Thank you so much, Fanny.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's been lovely.
Thank you for joining me today. And remember, any resources and links mentioned in this episode can be found in the show notes. If you're enjoying this podcast, I would be so grateful if you would kindly share, subscribe, and leave a positive review so that the podcast can help and reach as many people as possible. Thank you again for listening. Have a gorgeous day, and I'll see you in the next episode.